Welcome back. I'm joined in the studio by Kristen Collier-Vala, Casper Trolla-Borup, and Maria Bartnes for the panel discussion about the private sector. So our first question today is, can you say a bit about having a doctoral degree and working outside academia? Has it ever felt like a plan B for you? Or did you see a career within the private sector as a possibility from the start? We'll start with you,
I'll
Casper.
start. Thank you. Nice. So I think I sort of always knew that I would end up in the private sector and not academia, although I really like academia. I think when I was an intern during my studies, I felt like I identified that in the company I was in, which was a big Danish tech company, like there was, when it was more theoretical, there would be like tool users and tool builders. And for me, it was, I felt I wanted to get the theoretical depth to be able to be a tool builder. So that's sort of why I applied for a PhD. Yeah. But afterwards, like, I'm happy in the private sector.
Yeah. How about you, Kristen?
I think I didn't. It wasn't a part of my plan to start with. It was a bit of a coincidence that I ended up in the private sector. But because I initially had a plan to continue at university. I really like to lift up every stone and look for every kind of answer and dig. The deeper I could dig, the more happy I was. But I think with time I also saw that I really like to be able to help solving a problem, an operational problem, a practical problem. So I really, as I said, it was a bit of a coincidence my way into the private sector, but I very much enjoy both, and I enjoy having the depth of my knowledge when I went into the private sector. That's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Maria?
I never had a plan. So when I started my master's, I had no idea where I wanted to work afterwards. But then after my 4th year of the master's, I had a summer internship in Sintef. And then soon after that, I got the job as well. So I knew that I would be starting in Sintef. And when I was there my first day, I think my boss said to me, and then I hope you will want to do a PhD one day. And I said, sure. And I thought, it will never happen. I'm not interested. But after working in Sintef with research for some years, then I was really motivated because I understood more about what research is. And I understand that learning research, having the time to learn research methods in a proper way was one of the things that motivated me for doing a PhD. And even if Sintef is private, it's also kind of academic, so it's quite natural to go for a PhD if you want to stay in Sintef.
Right, yeah. It seems like a nice
But I needed
combo.
some years of experience in order to understand that, okay, I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. So we'll start with you. Did you find it easier or harder than expected? I guess in this case, you had already worked there, but to find relevant work after finishing your PhD?
Well, I kept my position at Sintef as a part-time job all the time doing a PhD, so for me it was quite natural to go back to Sintef. Although I was a bit tired of research, as I said in my presentation, I wanted to do something else and to work closer to practice. So I went to this head of IT security job where I really didn't need the PhD, but of course it was an advantage for me to know how are the researchers working in order to reach them with working with security awareness. But I've been in Sintef ever since I finished my master's, so it's maybe the question is not the best for me.
True. It wasn't natural for
It's
you.
easy to find a job in Sintef with a PhD.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about for you, Kristen?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I recognize a lot of what you're saying because I think I started out, like I said, with the plan to continue research, but at some point I was actually, you can see headhunted, but it was a little bit like this because at Equinor, at the research center here at Rotvoll in Trondheim, it was they had started a new project. They needed a person with my background. They needed a person that had been doing fieldwork in Arctic under Arctic conditions. So I started working there for a period of time, and then I saw that it's very different to work towards a technology or a solution. It's very different than doing research for the case of the research. So I saw that the research methods and also the way of because I think maybe I had a little bit of a transition in Equinor, because I was still doing research, but with a goal, but a very specific goal of solving a very specific problem. So after that year, I found my way into. It was actually one of the partners in the project, that company here in Trondheim called Aptomar. So I contacted them because I had some ideas around this environmental monitoring, and maybe in a broader sense than oil spill preparedness that I had been working with. So and I saw that the difference was, I was a bit surprised, because it's a very different way of working. So all the time-consuming turning every stone that I was used to, it was much more hands-on, much more operational goals. So I had a bit of a natural transition in my year in Equinor before I went into the industry, because the way of working is quite different. And I think it's very, very good to have both perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess for you, with a startup, it's a little bit of a different kinds of question.
Yeah. Getting the job in itself was pretty easy, being a co-founder, but it's, I guess, keeping the startup alive and making it thrive, that's difficult and a lot of hard work. So,
right.
Yeah, just for context, I work for a startup called Ubik Aerospace, and we're in Trondheim located. It's a spin-off from NTNU. During the PhD, at least my friend did the research in that field, and we found out that there would be some sort of interest from industry in creating something within that. So we started the company, him and I, together with the professor and the transfer office. Yeah.
Cool. So are there any special courses or skills that you might recommend that would prepare someone during their PhD for a career in the private sector, in your experience? Kristen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but I should have taken some more economy, because that's something you need to deal with at some point. Because at least in my position, I'm deeply involved in the R&D process, although I'm not doing the research myself. But I see that part that has to do with applications for funding, all that part, follow-up administration of projects, etc. You need that part. So in my case, I can talk only for myself now, but a little bit of project management and economy, I think in my case at least, would have been really practical. Not that I would do a complete, but a course or two would definitely have done me good.
Oh, that's good advice. How about you, Maria?
Yeah, I would say even though doing a PhD is about being the really expert in one scientific area, I still think it's a good thing to remember that there is always a context. So having courses from different scientific areas put into your PhD, I think can help you look at your expertise in a bit different way, and maybe prepare you to collaborate with others as well. And I think that's what we need in order to solve the big problems in the world currently. So I myself took courses during my PhD from 3 different departments, and not just from one. And I think that really helped me in doing better research and understanding my area from different point of views, adding more value. Yeah. So looking a bit up from your expertise, I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think I would suggest like specific courses like aerodynamics, but more like skills that derive from doing the PhD. So I think, and that's something you have to cultivate, but I think communications is extremely important. Like you'll use that for the rest of your life, both in and out of work. Then task ownership, like being able to, if somebody hands you a task, you either complete it or you let them know why you can't complete it. I think that's very important.
Right.
Initiative, like we have been lucky to hire a lot of skilled people, and when an expert comes into Ubik Aerospace, they usually tell us like, you should also be doing this and this and that, and I can help you do it. And that's very nice. I think that's very valuable. And I think the last thing is maybe, I think most PhDs are like that, or at least learn to be like that, is being structured. Like not showing up late for meetings and having an overview of the task you need to do, these sorts of things. And I think a lot of PhDs actually learn that if they haven't learned it before.
Right. Well, those are all good. So how important is your PhD topic when you start in industry. What's your opinion on that?
So I think the field, from my experience, the field is important. Like, are you an electrical engineer or are you a mechanical engineer, for example, or something completely different? But the topic itself, unless you're hired by Syntef to do research on something very specific that you've done research in previously, for me it doesn't feel that particularly important unless it's either academia or research organization where that's what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with that. I think all the skills that are more, because it's difficult to say something general, because we all ended up where we are now in different ways, and we had different plans, etc. And I think that it's difficult to say something general about that. But the thing that is really valuable are all the skills that are general for a PhD. I think because it can be different topics, it can be different areas, so it can be but I think communication, like you say, that you do all the time. How to write in a proper way, how to speak in a proper way, how to reach out to different people on different positions with the different. It can be customers, it can be research institutes. You learn you learn really good communication skills. That's something I would agree totally to, and also that you're analytical, and that you that if you are given a task, or if someone comes and asks something, you can say, I don't know, but that's something I will find out. And then you don't, or at least in my case, I never felt scared of getting a new task in my lap that I wasn't capable of solving, because that's sort of what you do. So so that's a very valuable skill that I think everyone with a PhD feel that they have.
Yeah, I totally support that. I think it's about all the other abilities that you develop when being a PhD student. Collaborating with others, hopefully. I know some PhD students work a lot by themselves and alone, and I would really encourage them to seek collaborations, because that's valuable, both national and internationally. And communication, as you said, if you're not able to communicate your expertise, your knowledge, it's actually not very useful to others, because what you know cannot be used by others if you're not able to communicate it in different ways. And as you say, the analytical approach, that you're able to ask questions and not just take answers for the complete truth, but you're actually able to go behind the scenes and understand, and maybe be a bit more critical. So I think it's more about all the other abilities, which are very useful in all jobs. Yeah.
True. So how do you feel your contribution to the team differs because you're a PhD?
Maybe specifically on that point that we just talked about, because I know that we have a lot of people with very specific that do very specific things in our company. I work now in Aptomar was bought by Norbit, which is a very big technology company here in Trondheim. It was bought back in 2017. So we work now we have a group for the entire ocean segment. So it's technology for monitoring both on the surface, or from space for that matter, and everything that is below the sea surface. So we have a lot of people, of engineers, that are working specifically with producing sonars, producing camera systems, etc. So I think, but if we have to look into a different area, look for possibilities within a different domain, everything that the company would like to know something more about, it's very often dumped on my desk, and this is I think that they know that I like to dig into things I don't know a lot about, and also value a lot that that I like it, and my skills at doing it. So I really like to sort of get my hands around it, and get sort of a short resume that I can communicate out to the others. So I do a lot of this, making people talk together, and and distributing new information, asking if people need something, trying to find out the people who can help the others. I have a lot of these. It's a lot connected to that part of being able to take on new knowledge, really.
Yeah.
Mm.
What do you think?
Um,
Casper?
yeah, so I feel that within my situation, we've been very lucky. So I think we have approximately half PhDs, half non-PhDs. Not that I want to make that border between
Right.
people. And I feel like we've been lucky to have a lot of clever and skilled people in. So I don't really think of it in those terms, like everybody contributes. So for me, I haven't had a lot of experience with that. But I know from myself, from before the PhD and now, I'm better at taking new information and, like you said, and learning stuff on my own. I like to read math stuff, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without the PhD. So,
Right.
Yeah, and for me, being a full-time manager, of course, that's an expertise in itself. But I feel that having the experience that a PhD gives me, and being a kind of, or was a research expert at some time, I think it makes me better able to understand what my researchers are doing and the challenges they meet, and to talk to them in a way that they know that I understand how they work. So I think it just gives me a kind of higher credibility as a manager. And you can definitely be a manager in Sintef without having a PhD, but I think it gives added value in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Kristen, the next question is for you. Did you need PMP or any special courses in project management in order to get your job as a research manager?
Well, I never got to ask someone that because since I sort of ended up where I did without a plan, then but like I said before, it would have been practical. It would, but it wasn't necessary. I mean, everything can be learned. So I think in my case, it's a bit of coincidence that I am where I am. And we don't have a lot of people with a PhD in Norbit, but it's because it's a different. It's really highly skilled people, but they are working in. It is a different way of working. So I think it's all these skills that we are talking about now are also skills that I have sort of learned to appreciate, and maybe that I have developed more since I have that background. I think it at least for Norbit, I think I contribute with a lot of things that are not that I didn't take any courses, and I wasn't very aware of them when I started there, but I see now that that maybe I'm a little bit unique when it comes to that to the diversity of skills, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So, Maria, the next one is for you.
Okay.
So, why is Sintef aiming to increase the amount of employees with a PhD? Will these be filled with senior positions, and how will this affect the project structure if there will be 75% PhDs, meaning there will be less, for example, lab engineers, administrative staff, and more people managing the project?
Okay, that's we aim at increasing the number of PhDs among the scientific personnel, so it doesn't really affect the administrative personnel and the lab engineers. But it's so it's about increasing the number of PhDs among the researchers that we have, and it's about increasing the research quality. 30 years ago, it wasn't that important to have a PhD as a research scientist in Sintef, and I think it's just a trend that it's been becoming more and more important the last years, and when we see that need to I mean, having a PhD it's an education in doing research, and if you're going to have a career in research, it makes sense, and it is to improve the quality of research. And I said in my presentation that you sometimes need a PhD in order to be a research manager for projects from the Research Council. And it's to show that you are actually the best qualified person to set the scientific direction for your project. It's not just for having PhDs as project managers, but it's for being the expert and setting the direction and leading the other researchers in doing the best possible research. And our most important deliverable is research-based knowledge. And then you have to do research. You need to know how to do research. And then you need a PhD.
Makes sense. Let's see. So this is maybe a good question for you. So do you know if it's possible to do the PhD and a related industrial job simultaneously?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah, so we actually do have industrial PhDs, or we have one, I think. And then we're also related to some research going on at NTNU where we collaborate, good synergies, and we hire some PhDs in on 25% positions. So that is definitely an option. Yeah, and I think it's working out quite well for those PhDs. I'm allowing myself to speak for them. I hope that's okay. So because like a lot of research being done, like for me, it was if you wanted to test something on drones, which is the technology I work with, like there's a lot of work leading up to that to get one set of results somehow. And here they have a whole infrastructure, meaning the rest of us working together with them to make that work. So you get like the practical implementation, and then they can do some research on the results afterwards. So I think I think that makes a lot of sense. But you of course have to be a little careful that it's a project that you think is interesting, that you want to work on, and that the company is aware of your obligations as a PhD candidate.
Right. So I know you had mentioned that SINTEF hires people in the process of having a PhD. What's your experience with those students? Do they end up staying on? Do you hire them permanently after, or how often does that
we
happen?
usually either we hire people who already have a PhD, or we encouraged our own employees to go for a PhD and then have a part-time position at SINTEF at the same time. Because while they're doing their PhD, it's kind of better than that they focus on doing their PhD and completing it, and then come back to us afterwards. So we don't hire PhD students that often while they are doing their PhD, but we are happy to include them in our projects so that they get a group of researchers to work together with, and they get access to the industry. And so we're more than happy to collaborate with PhD students, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then what's your experience with NORPET?
I think it's certainly encouraged, and I think that we see more and more in the industry in general that the industry is research driven, and we have to be, because if we are supposed to solve all these tough problems with we're changing to clean energy, infrastructure for growing populations. We constantly need new technology, and it has to be research driven. So it's whether NORBIT is focusing specifically in hiring more people with PhD backgrounds. I think it's not a specific goal, because they are much more looking for the right people, and those people have different backgrounds. So they are really good at finding the right people, and also finding the right people to work together. So, but I think that we are involved in a lot of projects, and both within the monitoring offshore oil and gas segment, is one thing that a lot of things have changed, and but also towards the aquaculture, for example, we see that it's a completely different ballgame than it was 15 years ago. So we see that the industry has a lot of people. They have specific challenges or problems that need solved, and it's a lot of focus on having people doing a PhD to actually have the right background to know what direction the technology development should take afterwards. So I see that has changed a lot, and we collaborate in a lot of. We sit in a lot of consortium and research projects that include several PhDs, and it has always been like this. So I think it's like you said, it's really important that we are able to communicate and talk together and understand each other and listen, because I think maybe it has been a challenge over time that we are dealing with industries that are maybe a little bit conservative. I mean, traditionally, and it's a lot of practical or operational approaches and a lot of knowledge that is related to how you operate a system or how you cultivate salmon, just as an example. And then when you come there with and have read all your books and you're supposed to talk to this person and find a solution to then you that is a challenge. So I think to really recognize that we have different backgrounds and different skills and different knowledge, and really be good at listening to each other. I think that's what we really need to do in order to get where we need to get. Yeah.
Okay.
That was a long answer.
I like it. Yeah.
So this person asked, so I've never worked in any industry. I've been working as an assistant professor and researcher only. It's my keen interest to work in the industry, especially in SINTEF. Could you please suggest to me how I can get an entry in?
Yeah, well then, based on your scientific interests, you could look up to find contact persons in SINTEF within the right field. We have researchers working in every field. I think every single field you could think of, it could be room for you in SINTEF. And go to our webpage, find a contact person. That's the way in. And also look at the vacant positions. There is sometimes open positions, of course, but you're fully able to apply even though we don't have an opening. So yeah, just find a person, take contact, and then you'll get help in order to find the right group or department. So just try, contact us, call someone. Yeah.
Okay. Would the same be true in your companies?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we're always looking for people, and we're growing rapidly at the moment. So just reach out. Yeah.
Okay. So even if there's not a job posted,
Yeah, definitely.
send in.
Yeah,
your
it might
CV
just be a little later, maybe in a half year then, but still. Yeah.
And it has been mentioned in the talks earlier today, but I think also that it's important to be a bit focused on how you sell yourself in, because that's also a bit. I'm also reading through a lot of applications, and I see that people with a PhD tend to undersell themselves over and over, and I think it's really important to just because I mean. Yeah, your papers are there. They can always be checked. But to tell this is me. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I'm good at. This is what I like working with, and just do start by a presentation of yourself, who you are, and what you like to work with. I think it makes you stand out, and because, like I said, we are looking for the right people because we are working very closely in groups. So we need to know that this is a person that can, and then you can always, your papers are there. So I think it's more important to actually focus on your on the skills that you think stand out a bit from the rest. Yeah.
Okay. So it seems that all of you actually have ended up in manager/director positions. Is that the typical trajectory of a PhD, or are there other typical trajectories? I mean, it sounds like you guys have researchers working for you, but ultimately, do they end up in a manager position, or how does this work?
I think it definitely depends on the profile of the person, like the personality profile as well. Like, you could be a specialist as well if you want to. I think some people are less interested in that structured work of running a project or managing a project. So I think that definitely depends on the personality type and their interests.
Yeah, and in SINTEF, it's much more typical than that you remain in a research position and you climb your way up the kind of research ladder, starting as a researcher, going on to a senior scientist, senior research scientist, and then ultimately chief research scientist, which is the kind of highest level of the ladder that you could reach in SINTEF. So being a researcher with a PhD is a career path in SINTEF. But we do need people with PhDs as managers as well, especially managing the research groups. And that's the manager closest to the researchers who are responsible for developing the people and developing their career. So we do need PhDs to have that positions as well. But it's easier to keep them. I mean, they tend to prefer the research position.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I agree, and I think when in my case it wasn't. I think that also was a bit of a coincidence, but it wasn't something I specifically went for, or I think it's yeah. Since I have that background, it's quite. It has been quite natural to give me that position, and also as also was mentioned that very often if you apply for research fundings, you require a PhD in order to apply for the funding. So they need to know that the people with that background is involved in the project. So that was it. That yeah, and I have been that person on several occasions, and then so I have naturally ended up being managing the project and getting in the right people and making sure that because people are working on different things and sewing it all together and making the overview, and it has sort of come a little bit natural, I think. Yeah. So I wasn't specifically hired to be a manager, not at all. And I'm not managing all the time either. And I don't want to. So it's
Comes with a price.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys all have a background from science, engineering, technology. But what about others with backgrounds in social sciences and the humanities? Do you think they also have opportunities to work in the industry?
Definitely. Well, you should answer for the industry, but at Sintef, it's important to us to combine the social sciences and technology into our projects. Again, in order to solve the big problems of the world, we cannot just focus on technology. You need to understand the people who are going to use the technology or are being exposed to the technology, and you need to understand the organization and the effect on society. So you're going to need the whole view in order to produce the best possible results for the future. So we hire people with social sciences background as well. Also in my department, where we work with software engineering and security and safety, we still have people with social sciences. We need that. Look at human factors. So that's the possibilities in Sintef at least.
Yeah, the same. And I think with all the new requirements and all new sustainability goals, I mean, it's the political part of what you do is becoming increasingly important, and it's not. I mean, that's a field in itself, and it's not something that just comes easily. So I definitely think that background is it's just as valuable as my background in my company. Yeah.
I think for us, right now we're quite tech heavy, but we're transitioning into a new stage where it's more likely that we would hire somebody like with those skills. And I think in time, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool. So this person wrote, I appreciated Kristen's words on the difference in salaries, permanent and temporary positions, etc., between academia and industry. Can you, Maria, and Casper speak about typical salaries and contracts in your experiences?
Well, for a newly educated master, we follow the recommendations from Tekna. And from then on, you have some additional, what's it called, to your salary, of course, every year. And as a PhD, you get a jump up on the ladder. I think we are usually not able to compete with the best paying industry. But then again, we have very good conditions for insurances and the complete freedom you have as a researcher in your everyday life. So we kind of compensate with others, with other things. But we're definitely above the public sector.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess we've also been following Tekna. The people who got in very early, we needed very skilled people. We also needed to, we made them co-owners, key personnel. I think that's important that the people who work a lot are compensated in that sense. I think in time, within the next year, we'll probably change up the hiring strategy or the compensation strategy, because I think we've identified that we need the best people to be able to succeed. So we'll probably try to buy them in that sense. Yeah, like. So, yeah. But I think that's very dependent on company to company. But that's going to be our strategy.
Sure.
But of course, we need to compete with the other companies. So it's for Sintef as well. We need to try to adjust the salary to what kind of employer market is the person relevant for.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it will differ depending on which scientific area we're talking about. Definitely, because we need the best people as well.
Yeah,
You need the best people, and I need the best people.
Always eternal competition.
In combination.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this one's for you, Casper. What's the typical success/failure rate for startups? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the statistics, but I guess it's in different stages, right? Like there's a filter along the way. I think it's something along the lines that 20-30% make it past the first couple of years. It's not that high. It's something like that. I'm not certain. I don't know the statistics. So it's but I do have a lot of advice on how to do a startup. So if somebody's interested in that, they should feel free to reach out. Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of a specific question, but if any of you have experience with it, just pipe up. So have you experienced any difficulties with applying for jobs due to non-EU national/security clearance? Like you wanted to hire somebody, but you weren't able to get them through because of difficulties.
Yeah, we experience those issues quite often these days, based on the recommendations from the security authorities in Norway. There are some countries, and especially outside of the EU, that is very difficult to hire from these days, especially into the security field. And it has to do with both our customers in critical infrastructure, who have some requirements, of course, for whom to share information with and not. And it's also about making sure that our people are safe, because the security authorities talk about the threats towards them as well. So we need to balance that, and we need to take care of and be the best possible workplace for our employees. So we have our concerns about hiring people from certain countries due to that. Yeah, it's a challenge these days.
I could see. Yeah. Do you guys have any comments on that?
I'm not specifically involved in the hiring, so but I know there has been a couple of challenges. So I think that's I can't say anything more specific about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to be aware of at least. Yeah.
Definitely. Let's see if there's any more. I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but this will be the last question. So how long before you finished your PhD did you start applying for positions? Does that only apply to you, Kristen?
No, I didn't. I didn't apply for a position, any other position. I was 100% sure I wanted to take a PhD. I just wanted to make sure that, not that it was relevant for anything at all, just because it was relevant for me, because it had to be something I was interested in, and that's it. So I didn't have a specific plan on a specific topic, and I didn't apply for anything during my PhD either, because I planned to continue at university, and then this possibility just turned up. So I didn't do anything to make it happen. Yeah.
Okay. Did you guys put out any?
Well, no, it's not
feelers
relevant for me, but I would say that it depends. I mean, as an advice for the listeners, I would say it depends very much on which area they are studying, because it's quite big differences in the market for how easy it is to get a job. So it's a bit difficult to give one advice that goes for all.
Yeah, I guess we started UBIC Aerospace while I was still doing the PhD, so it was a little bit stressful at times, but I would have definitely, if I knew I wasn't going to do that, I would have started applying for jobs or looking for jobs a year before ending, I think, something like that. It would be sad to just say, like, I'm stressed out now, I'm not able to handle it, and then the PhD is done, and then, like, what do I do now?
And
Sure.
having a job waiting for you could be a good motivation for actually finishing.
That's a good
Because
point.
it might happen that you kind of postpone and postpone and postpone
Yeah.
because you don't have anything else waiting for you.
No, or you
which
came
is
up
a
with
bit
just
dangerous.
one more good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good.
Just one more paper, just
Yeah.
one more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it could be a good idea to have a deadline out there, which is kind of controlled by others.
Yeah, I would definitely agree to that. And also that you actually get a bit of an overview of your possibilities. Because it's a bit difficult to know when you sit there and you're into your research field, and you should look up a little bit and maybe even do a little tour. And go visit different. If it's something specific you're interested in, take a call. Go and visit them. Talk to them. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's
Go to career days for master students as well. I mean, you will meet the companies, especially on Glashaugen. That's the case. There's a lot of opportunities to see who could be relevant and talk to those.
And maybe the things you are writing about is really relevant for someone, and you just didn't think about it because, it takes a bit of it's a bit difficult to look up when you sit there and are very deep in the. So that's that's definitely something you should do.
And give talks on industry conferences to promote yourself. It's about communicating your results, of course, and also for showing that yourself you exist and you know something and you could be useful for that industry.
So in the last couple of minutes, any last advice you would give to PhD students?
I would like to repeat the advice that I had in my presentation to actually finish your PhD. And it's never going to be the world's best research project anyway. It's more important to actually finish. The PhD has the most value when it's actually done.
That is very good advice.
I think that's a very good advice, and don't be too hard on yourself, because in the end, it doesn't matter that much.
Right? Relax.
Maybe that is changing also a little bit. It depends on whether you do. I mean, what kind of a PhD you are doing. What's your topic? Because a lot of people are now directing. They have actually operational problems, maybe, or issues that they can direct their work towards. So I think then it's much more. We're going much more in that direction now, and I think that's quite wise. Have that a little bit at the back of your head that the things that you do can be used by someone. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't turn stones and do research for the sake of the research, but there are maybe two different roads there. So you should be a bit focused on what you would like to do.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for joining me today. And we'll be back at 1 o'clock for our next session on applying for a job. See you then.